but it's also probably a 2 liter to 2.4 liter. I'm not sure, but it's not a huge displacement. Super short for a pipe.
ドリームマッチ追走バトル、伝説に残る最も激しいバトルが始まった。D1 の神様のいたずらなのか、この勝負に決着の2文字は存在しない。
見事な走りだ。
幾度も繰り返されるバトル、どちらも譲らない戦いの末、ついに勝負がついたと思われた。しかし、
サドンデス
You never see these things get pulled out, but they just pulled the other one out, and it's just neat to see these things. But it's like under 2 inches of dust. Look at that. So cool. It's crazy to think about how many amazing drift cars there are in this world that are like comp cars or just not being used, and they required so much building and thought and maintenance and love and care, and then for one reason or another, maybe they're not competitive anymore, maybe someone moved on, maybe there's just not money to like run the program anymore. There's amazing, beautiful drift cars sitting collecting dust long term, not being used. And it's not a shame or anything, because like a car like this with a crazy transmission and crazy engine and everything else is not something you can take out and just beat on like my Matsuri car over there. This would require a lot of maintenance, a whole team to run it. It's more of a competition car and an advertising platform for people, because it's just too expensive to run all the time. I don't know how like expensive this particular car is, but it's definitely not like a Matsuri car or something like that. So it's really, really cool to see competition cars pulled out and like hiding everywhere in this world, and that they still exist. They don't just disappear. Isn't it neat to see these?
Look at that. This is like 5-year-old dust right there.
It's probably older than that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like an old dinosaur.
Yep. So cool. He was super backlit, but if you couldn't see who that is, it's Osbo. He's shooting an episode of Top Gear here today. These cars also, so these are the Team Orange cars, since you probably don't know what they are. I think they both have a 4G63 in them mounted this way instead of this way. And then they probably have some cool HKS sequential transmission in there or something like that. They probably are not the best drift cars for various reasons, because it's not the chassis. Like, you had to do a lot to the chassis to make it work. They don't have huge displacement motors. You know, they have issues because it was an all-wheel drive platform that was converted over to rear-wheel drive. So you don't get to utilize everything, you know, like that the engineers originally built them for. But still so cool. And they were very, I was explained to why these cars were built a long time ago. Is because there was the Kumakubo and the Team Orange guys, they thought if everybody else was driving, say, an S15 or S13 or something like that, you have too many people in the same cars, and that this would broaden out the spectator base for the sport, bringing in more cars that you don't see. So they chose specifically the Evo because it was a performance car. There was a lot of enthusiasts that loved them. It's a really cool platform and stuff. but no one else was going to build it because it was too expensive and didn't make sense and didn't have the available parts for the chassis and stuff to make them work. So they thought we could do this as a team. We could be super unique, and anyone that's a fan of, because they did Subarus and Evos, anybody that's a fan of those would love our cars, and the fan base would not be split up between 40 guys that drive the same chassis, if that makes sense. So they would immediately have the biggest spectator base because they'd have unique cars. If that worked out, I'm not sure, but it was definitely an interesting thought. And it brought a lot of excitement to the sport as well. Hello, how are you? Let's find some details. They have huge brakes that aren't really necessary for drifting. These are really, really big rotors. The calipers typically on stuff like this aren't very heavy. It's the rotors that are really heavy. And drifting, you don't really require something like that. So those are very cool, but they're not necessary at all for drifting. The wheels are super cool. The overall body kit and the presentation of the car is beautiful. It's put together very nicely. Everything fits fairly well. It has one cohesive theme of the, you know, like clean orange and clean body without everything falling off. And this car is probably somewhat towards the end of its useful life. This was a video game company they were promoting. So they actually had a really big company that was pushing D1 and whatchamacallit, drifting in general for a while. I don't know much about Yuki's or however you say it, but I do know they made a D1 PlayStation game. And if you can get a sponsor that's that big, that's way bigger than some coilover company or something on the side of the car. They have real money because they're dealing in, you know, large numbers of games being sold. Which is a way bigger market than drift stuff. And there's a lot of sponsors on this car too. And my shadow. That's bad lighting. Cool. Now everybody's walking around looking at the cars.
Maybe once or twice it's come out, but they've got used for one comp and things like that.
Andy, are they still competitive?
Ain't no 2J.
Oh, it's not a 2J, he says. I'm translating for people that don't speak Scottish. Are we just allowed to open them up?
Yeah.
That's what he said?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Cool. So I assume this is a 4G63, correct?
No.
What is it?
This is the 10, so this is the other.
Oh, it's after that.
Yeah, it's a newer motor.
I forgot which one we're looking at already. Big single turbo. Not huge though, it's not huge. But it's also probably a 2 liter to 2.4 liter, I'm not sure, but it's not a huge displacement motor. Super short intercooler piping, cool intake manifold. Look at this bar that runs across the engine bay here. That's interesting. So there's a tube frame structure behind the intercooler and everything. Cool carbon fiber pieces there. What's very interesting about this car too, if you look at I have to hold the engine bay so I can't, or the engine hood, not engine hood, the car hood, so you can't really see it, but the strut tower is completely behind the engine. And that's one of those things, typically you want the engine moved farther back behind those strut towers for better weight distribution. And that's why these chassis probably are not the best chassis to use for drifting. They're very front bias. And that's not too big of a deal when you're dealing with a rally car, or I would imagine it's not as big of a deal. But when you're dealing with a drift car in a rear wheel drive application, the more weight you can get over the rear so that you can have more traction, probably the better. I'm sure there's some type of diminishing return where you don't want a 60% weight bias in the rear. But you know, that would create more traction, I would think, although I'm not an engineer, and it probably would be ideal. Let's go look at the other car, since they said we could open them up. This is so Ricer of me looking at old D1 cars. I hate people touching my hood pins too. Because hood pins are always so janky and line up so poorly. Sai, can you come open this hood for me? And if you're a race car guy, people leave your hood pins open, you know, after you've checked them and everything, you get in the car, and then the hood flies up and smashes the roof and does tons of damage. Oh, be careful, Sai, come on. This thing is a ancient car. Okay, so this is more of a traditional, I had an Evo 8, so that looks exactly like an Evo 8 motor. What's interesting too is, I didn't realize this, the Evo 8 and Evo, is this an 8?
9.
It's a 9? Sorry, it's so hard to tell these apart. The 9 and 8, the motors flipped around or something because the turbo was on that side and the intake manifold was on that side on the other one. So they actually have fairly different drivetrains because of that. Has a Garrett turbo. I can't tell what size it is, but it's probably around a 30R, maybe a little bit bigger. So this car probably doesn't make more than 500 wheel. Super short intercooler piping right here, which is really cool. It looks like it touches the hood, so they have a little tiny wear pad or something right here. Not sure what's going on there. Yeah, tiny amount of intercooler piping. Intercooler is in a V mount here to try and get the air to come in through a specific way. And it's hard to tell, but the radiator, that's an oil cooler right there. The radiator is in a V mount on the bottom of it, and then there's some coolers there. Beautiful. Sugoi.
I miss him rolling on the S15.
No, so that.
Oh, I know, but still very cool. He runs the shop right down the hill that builds and maintains these cars and stuff. So cool. I felt like we're gonna be in trouble looking at it.
Did you miss him rolling the S15 shell down the
Oh my God! Did you film it?
Of course.
Okay, good. I can splice it all together. You'll notice I guess the chassis are completely different, but it looks like it has tube structure going down with fender well like tubs. The camber plate setup and everything was completely different on the other cars. Obviously it's a different chassis and stuff, but means like nothing probably interchanged between the two cars. The suspensions don't interchange. The camber plates don't even interchange. The engine stuff is on different sides, so nothing interchanges between these two cars, which means they had to build two separate cars, so everything is one-off kind of thing. They didn't get to build two cars and then just copy-paste everything, which makes everything so much easier. This poor little guy needs so much maintenance and love. But it fired right up and moved, and they probably haven't been moved in forever. All they did was attach a jump box and go for it.
It's a lot of dirt.
It is. All right, let's close the hood. Unless you want to shoot, Sai. Are you shooting? Okay. Let's close the hood gently. Do you?
Yeah.
Look, everybody's interested in this thing.
Dude, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, you have an Evo.
Yeah. I used to have an Evo. I sold it.
What's the name of the Evo 10 since you had one? I mean, for the engine.
4B11.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with the 4G63.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Cool. There he goes with it. Here's, hold this side.
Keep going.
Is he backing it in? Close the hood pins? Yeah, just be careful with it.
Yo, the lighting with me.
I missed the lighting.
Go shoot. Go. Sai looks so excited. Oh, he had to move everything to get the shell out. I get it.
Really?
Yeah. He had to get the S15 shell out, so he got... How did he move it by himself?
Yeah. It was on a roller thing. He was like holding it. He's like, oh, God.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
I think it's time for top tier stuff.
Oh, yeah. Tokyo
Cool, let's go. All right, I have to go film something as probably a retarded extra, oh, can't say that, as a stupid extra person. Let's do it.
サドンデスでサドンデスです。
おお。
もう一度です。
おお、なるほど。
もう一度やるんですか。あ、ちょっと俺もちょっと気持ちがちょっと一瞬で。
また2人からですね、お互いに拍手が出ました。
出ましたね。さあということでサドンデスでサドンデスになりました。さあ先に行きます手塚。そして末永直人も追う。角度はやはり手塚が強い。角度は手塚だ。いいね。そして追う末永も見たと言ってる。見たと言ってるぞ。えぐってる差し込んでるぞ。おお差し込んでる。すごい。末永いいぞ。末永いい。ここからだ。手塚がえぐっていく。おおいいぞ。そして差し込む振り返しもいい。手塚がいい。おーとコーンがまた当たった。おおすごい当たってる。すごいぞ。 あれまたサドンデスですよ。互角の戦いです。すごいすごい。これもいい。これも接近だ。末永直人後ろからすごいぞ。これもビタビタだ。
まさにここからがプライドとプライドの勝負だ。
どうだ。そしてここも当たってる。すごいビンビンに当たってる。ビタビタ。これもすごいぞ。手塚があれどうなんだろう。
こういうっていうこういう時はどういう気持ちなんでしょう。
いやもうね、ヤッホーって感じ。
ヤッホー
かなり陽気楽しそうですもんね。
超楽しいですよ。そういうもんなんですか。
やってください。
もうね、もうみんなを飽きさせないようなサドンデスを繰り返しますよ。これはいい言葉ですね。自分たちでやってるんじゃないんだと。ね、お客さんを楽しませるんだ、お客さんにハッピーにさせるんだっていうその心構えがすごいですよね。
やっぱりプロですね。
プロですよ、これ
プロフェッショナルですよ
ね。
ニュアンスのところ。
さあ行くよ。
4度目。
さあ4度目サドンデス、これが決着するぞ。先行者が追っていく。末永直人。これもすごい。これいい。末永直人乗っている。さあということでいよいよ決着しそうです。さあ手塚がリードアドバンテージを覚えまして、いよいよ決着2本目。今度はあと1ですか。先行する来ました。今度は末永が離そうというところ。当たった。そしてチャンスがあった。今スローシーンご覧いただいています。これ今これ接触ね、ちょっと当たってますね。タイヤがね、フロントの同士ですね。結局大逆転で末永直人がベスト4に進出しました。